Hi and welcome back to my workshop. This is Lucas, a Violinmaker in Cremona. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I change the cello strings, as I think that the approach that we luthiers have towards it is slightly different than the ones that most musicians have. So along the way, I'm also going to be mentioning some tips and advice such as how to keep the right position and angle for the bridge. I'm also going to be mentioning which string goes in which peg and how to keep them lubricated so that they don't start blocking. I'm going to be saying some things regarding the tailpiece, especially the fine tuners, so as to avoid some weird noises. And I'm also going to be showing you how to subscribe to the channel, like and share the video if you like it, of course. I recently made a video about this. Recently? I think it was over a year ago now. Anyway, I made a video about this part for the violin. The thing is that it's slightly more complicated for the cello, so I decided to make a specific one for this. So then I will begin by placing the cello against a flat surface, and it's important to keep in mind that I want to put something soft where the screw and the back of the instrument are going to be so that I don't damage them. As I'm interested in trying this set of strings, which to be fair, I don't really think that they're the ones that I'm going to keep when I ship the instrument to the client, but as I'm interested in trying the whole set, what I'm going to do is to take all of the strings that are on the instrument right now out, which means of course that the bridge is also going to be removed. Nevertheless, for most musicians, what I would recommend doing is to work with only one string at a time. This way you can avoid having to deal with this hassle of removing the bridge. So you might be wondering why, if for musicians I recommend changing only one string at a time instead of the whole set as I'm going to be doing now, then why am I showing this when you could risk something like the sound post falling or not being able to put the bridge back in position? Well, first of all, I have to say that not all of my audience are musicians, if not that there are a lot of luthiers or people who are learning violin making. And also because I think that this way a lot of the things that happen are much more obvious, especially regarding the bridge movements. So when the bridge starts bending, it's going to become much more evident if I do it when changing the whole set of strings than when I do it with one string at a time or simply by tuning. But keep in mind that these movements are still going to happen even when I'm just simply tuning. So first things first, let's open the package. Whether I'm changing all the strings at once or not, I would always recommend placing some sort of cushion around this area here, so in case the bridge falls, snaps, or whatever other catastrophe might happen to it, I don't have to worry about the tailpiece or the fine tuners digging any sort of hole on the top and causing some sort of serious damage. So now that this is safe, I can start removing the strings. The reason why I removed the tailpiece is because I'm going to be taking each one of the screws of the fine tuners and I'm going to be rubbing them with pencil. This is not only going to make them run smoother and better, but if not, that it might help preventing some buzzing sound that sometimes come from them. Once I'm doing that on all the screws, for this particular tailpiece, I'm also going to be repeating the process inside here. Then as well, I'm going to be doing it on each one of the holes on the bridge, even if they already have some. And here on the nut. So let's talk for a second about the pegs. The order of the strings on them is of course C, G, D, A or Do, Sol, Re, La. The secret, and I don't really want to call it a secret because I don't think it is, so let's say the key for them to run smooth is to apply a lubricant to the pegs. What I would recommend for most musicians doing is to apply peg paste like this, which is very easy to get, very affordable, and also very easy to apply. It's not something you can really go wrong with. So how often do you have to apply it? That really depends a lot on how the peg runs. It can be once a year or every time you change the strings, which for some people is once every 2 or 3 years. But keep in mind that if you put too much of it, or that if you do it too often, then what is going to happen is that the peg is not going to stay in tune, if not that it's going to slip back. So it's important that the peg runs smooth, but that it also holds and stays in position. So now what I'm going to do is to remove one of the pegs and show you how to apply it. As you can see, I already applied some peg paste in this one before, but for new instruments or at least new pegs, I usually have to do it a couple of times until the hole on the peg box starts absorbing some. Obviously, if you're changing one string at a time, what you can do is to do it individually to each peg while you're making the change. One good way of knowing that I apply the right amount of peg paste is this sound that the peg makes when I start moving it. This means that the peg got to block, so we'll probably keep the tuning, but at the same time when I start moving it, it runs very smoothly. Now I will put the tailpiece back in position and I will start putting the strings without applying much strength before we get into what is probably the most delicate topic, that is the bridge. Make sure that the tailpiece is centered with the saddle. And with the strings, I will begin always by putting the C and A. Then I will put G and then I will put D. Now I'm putting them like this roughly, because I won't stay anyway. Not until I put the bridge. Let's begin talking about the positioning of the bridge. The bridge has to be placed in a way that it's centered with a diapason, and the diapason is usually marked by these internal cuts on the F-holes. Another thing is that it has to be centered with the center line of the instrument, and also in a way that when I look from here, the bridge is aligned with the fingerboard and with the tailpiece. Now I'm going to loosen the strings a tiny bit more and place the bridge there. We'll now tighten them a tiny bit so that the bridge stays in place for a second before we get into the most interesting part, let's say. As you can see, now the bridge is properly positioned. Kind of. You will later on see why it's not perfectly there yet. But before, let's discuss one of the things that we Violinmakers talk about and see the most, which is bent bridges. Usually the conversations go on something like this. Did you see how bent the bridge was? Yes. We're Violinmakers, we don't really talk much. We don't know how to do that with humans. Anyway, let me show you how to prevent this from happening, and I will also try to explain you why this happens. The bridge has to be at a 90-degree angle with the top, this part, the side that it's facing the tailpiece. So what is going to happen when I start tuning is that as I'm applying a force in this direction, there's going to be strength going this way, then the bridge is going to be moving like this. And that's exactly what is going to happen. It's going to move from this area under the heart of the bridge to that direction. And you will notice it because the legs of the bridge will start opening on this side. What you will see me do when I properly start tuning is that I'm going to keep fixing the bridge from this area here, the one that I mentioned before that it's under the heart, up to when I reach to something like 1 or 2 tones behind the actual tuning. And what do I mean by that? It is that, for example, this string that eventually will be tuned as a C, I will probably stop fixing the bridge from here when I get to something like an A or a B. And I'm saying this A or B a bit randomly because it kind of is. I'm not exactly sure when it is that the bridge is going to stop moving here. What I will have to do, of course, is to position myself looking at the bridge directly and see if it's still 90 degrees to the top, and if it is still straight, and if it needs to be fixed, I will have to do it. But when I get to that point with all the strings that I'm quite close to the actual tuning, what will happen is that the bridge will have enough strength being made by the strings in this direction that it won't longer move from here. If not, that when I keep tuning those 2 or 1 tones more than I need, the bridge is going to start moving from the heart to the top, let's say, this area here, that is on top of the heart. So what I will have to do is to keep pulling back, but grabbing the bridge from here instead. Always looking at it and always checking that it's straight. Another thing that I didn't mention before, and this is the biggest difference that I have with tuning a violin, is that the legs of the bridge will have to be opened a bit as well. This is also something that I'm going to be doing mainly at the beginning, and because I won't be able to move the bridge once it's almost fully tuned. And basically with my 2 fingers here, I have to literally try to open the bridge, and you will hear those strange sounds. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and that you found it useful. Please let me know in the comments if you did, and also if you think that I forgot to mention something. As I said at the beginning as well, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to share and like the video if you think it can be helpful to someone else. And with all that said, I will see you next time.